Om Bhuvasvaha Om Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yonaha Prachodayat Om. Plane, astral plane, mental plane, spirit light, brilliance of divine, brilliance of divine, in deep meditation, illumine our minds, illumine our minds.
Well, welcome everyone. Namaste.
Namaste.
Thank you so much for attending tonight. This is the beginning of what will be many, many sessions that we'll have over the weekend during our Yoga Spirituality Global Conference. And this is, I believe, my 6th or 7th time back in Austin, something like that. I first came here maybe a year and a half ago or so, and I believe the very first time I appeared here, actually, I told people that I felt so much at home that I felt as if this was a second home. Because as people may know, I'm not from Austin, actually. I'm originally from New York City, but currently living in Omaha, Nebraska, where I have an ashram and a very authentic Vedic temple that is there. For about 2 years, I was the spiritual teacher of the Hindu temple of Omaha from roughly 2007 to 2009 or so, something like that. But every time I come here, I actually feel almost as if this is even more my home than Omaha. So it's absolutely wonderful to be back here again. Let me tell people just very quickly what we're going to be doing tonight. We're going to be talking about yoga. We're going to be talking about yoga spirituality, not asanas. Tomorrow we will be doing asanas. I'll be leading an asana class, a very special asana class. But as of tonight, we're going to be talking about what is the very essence of yoga, and that is yoga spirituality. The entire meaning of yoga is indeed spirituality. But again, we're going to get deeply into that in a minute. I don't want to give my talk just yet. After my talk is over, which hopefully will be somewhat brief, then we're going to be diving very deeply into actual practice. We're going to do actual, very authentic Vedic meditation, yogic meditation, mantra meditation. We'll do that for some time. And then after that, as I always do, I would like to open the floor for any questions that people have. Any questions at all about spirituality, about philosophy, etc. About why it is that we exist, why it is that we're here. Because that is actually what yoga provides for us, is precisely those answers. That's actually why it exists. So that will be the format for tonight. Before we proceed, however, I would like us to begin with a sacred shloka, a sacred verse from the Bhagavad Gita, the most important text on yoga spirituality. And to lead us in that, we have Savitri Devi. Please feel free whenever you're ready. Thank you. Probably. Mm-hmm. Probably stand.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to be reciting the mantra at the bottom of the page, so I'm going to recite it once, and then I'll have you all recite it with me 3 times. Yoginam api sarvesham madgatanantaratmana Shradhavan bhajate yomam sameyuktatamo mataha. Yoginam api sarvesham
Bhagatinantaratmana Shradhavan bhajate omam Same yuktatamo mataha Yoginam api sarvesham Madgatinantaratmana Shradhavan bhajate omam Same yuktatamo mataha Yoginam api sarvesham Madgatinantaratmana Shradhavan bhajate omam Same yuktatamo mataha. Thank you very much. Beautiful. Thank you. Of all yogis, he who abides in me with great assurance, worshipping me in meditative absorption, is most intimately united with me in yoga and is the greatest yogi of all. This is from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6, verse 47, and it describes the essence of yoga. This is Krishna who is speaking. Krishna of the famous Bhagavad Gita, and he himself gives what is the standard for yoga. Thank you very much. These words were first uttered approximately 5,112 years ago, give or take a day, but approximately that long ago. These are truly ancient teachings. And despite the fact that these are indeed truly ancient teachings, isn't it interesting how today in America, what to speak of the rest of the world, this very same philosophical system, even if in the form of asana, even if more in the form of the actual physical practices, has become so popular, has become so powerfully popular among the people, among the masses, to the point where in America, depending on who you listen to, 20, 21, 22 million people do yoga on a regular basis. And yet, what is this rooted in? The most ancient of teachings. And what's even more amazing is even though these words that Savitri Devi sang for us, even though these were first uttered, again, 5,100 years ago, even then, interestingly, Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita that once in a while, these teachings seem to disappear off the face of the earth, and again he has to teach them, thus explaining that actually these teachings are even more ancient than just 5,000 years ago. How ancient? How ancient? 1,000,000 years? 100 million years? 100 billion years? They are sanatana. They are eternal. Thus, interestingly, when we think about yoga spirituality, again, not merely the asanas are important, very important. That's why tomorrow we'll be having a 4-hour asana class. They are an integral part of yoga, but they are not the essence of yoga. These teachings have always been here, and they are available to all people, regardless of who they are, regardless of their nationality, regardless of their background. Only one thing is necessary in order to open ourselves to these teachings: sincerity. Sincerity. And sincerity in what sense? We have to know why we want to receive these teachings. For personal power, for personal gain, for fame, out of mere curiosity, just an intellectual curiosity? No. The reason why we practice spirituality of any form, really, or let me put it really more directly, the reason why we should be practicing true spirituality in any form is to know truth and to live that truth in such a manner that we personify that truth, that same truth that is eternal. Now, having said all this, this is America, this is Austin, this is 2015. What do these ancient teachings have to do with us today, and with such a lofty aim? How do we practice this today? Well, this is what I'm going to be talking about. This is the theme of today's talk. Number one, it's important to understand that this is a living tradition. To call it ancient, yes, that's correct, but it's not merely ancient. You see, when we think of eternality in the Western world, we tend to think in only one direction. We tend to think in the past, that it always has existed. More, yoga spirituality always shall exist. Spirituality always shall exist. Thus, when we think about this path of trying to know the divine, we're talking about something that is indeed a living tradition, not something that merely belongs to some ancient realm, some ancient world that we no longer have any connection to. Yoga spirituality has the ability to touch and to transform every single one of us today. And this is the thing, again, regardless of where we find ourselves. Regardless of where we find ourselves, regardless of, whether we have had a wonderful life or a truly terrible, traumatic life, regardless of whether we're doing well financially or whether we're poor, regardless of where we find ourselves, we can incorporate yoga spirituality into our lives in such a manner that in the here and now, practically, our lives can be revolutionized, truly changed for the better. So this is the first thing to understand. Yoga spirituality does indeed apply to all of us today. More, what does yoga spirituality look like? What do we think of usually if I were to use the word yogi? What do we think about? Maybe someone kind of sitting like this, maybe someone doing some sort of asana, maybe someone even steeped in meditation and wearing nothing but a loincloth, and maybe sitting in a cave or sitting in some ashram very deep in the forests of India, etc. This is probably what we tend to think of, correct? The truth of the matter is, yoga spirituality is something that when it is living within us, it's not something that we are doing merely when we are quote-unquote doing yoga. Let me explain what I mean by this, and I'll just use this as an example. With my students and my disciples, like with everyone else, very often I'll be speaking with some of them and they're going through some sort of hardship, some sort of just bad thing that they've gone through in their life, that they're struggling with, that they're trying to deal with. And, sometimes they'll come to me and the original idea was that we were going to either do something very philosophical or something meditative, etc. And instead, for an hour, we will just sit there and talk about the person's problem, what they're going through in their life right then and there. And that's how we end up spending the whole hour, and I will try to give them advice that comes from the Vedic scriptures. And often after that time is over, when it's all finished, I'll look at them and say, you know what? We just did yoga for the last hour. And sometimes they're surprised, but knowing me, sometimes they're not. Now, in what sense can I say this? Well, what is the purpose of yoga? In the immediate sense. In the immediate sense, the purpose of yoga is to come to a deeper and deeper, increasingly deeper understanding of what is our own true nature, of who and what we truly are. And what that means is dealing with the fact that, yes, presently, in our present form, we're an illusion. We know this. We know this. We face this every day, that we are an illusion. As a result, we have all of the challenges that we have in life as we struggle to, again, try to know who and what we are and what is the meaning of all this that we find around us. And especially today in 2015. See, I'm a little bit older. I grew up in the 70s when things were a little bit simpler, a little bit more down to earth. I grew up at a time when we didn't have the internet, etc., etc. Now when we look around us, not only has communication exploded, but unfortunately, the world has become a very different place. The level of stress and anxiety has increased dramatically throughout the world, and for very real reasons. This is the thing. For very, very real reasons. We have a lot of problems around us. The economy is not doing well, wars and rumors of wars and so many things happening, terrorism. Just in our own individual lives, people have to work harder and harder, it seems, just to make ends meet, etc., etc., etc. You know, what we see is that, yes, things have become very difficult. That's the negative. The positive is this. We don't want things to be this way for ourselves, and we know that there is a better way to live. We know this. We intuitively know this. We may not even be able to explain why or how that is the case, but we know that we are meant to live at peace. We are meant to live in health. We're meant to live in harmony with all living beings around us, in harmony with the cosmos. We know that we are not meant to wake up every day in anxiety. We know this. Why do we know this? That's the question. We know this because, as I've been saying recently to a few of my students, all of the gunk on the surface is not us. We are not all that. We are not all that. What are we in actuality? We are that being who is lying within. We are that being who intuitively we know is not meant to be experiencing all of the suffering and pain and confusion. Confusion in every sense, philosophical confusion, confusion about what's happening around us. Thus, what is the benefit? What is the purpose of yoga? And today, very practically, it is precisely to help us unfold who and what we truly are. Yoga has two goals, two primary goals. The first one is Atma-jnana, self-realization. Again, knowing who and what we truly are. But interestingly, if you go very deeply into the yoga scriptures, the Vedic scriptures, such things as the Yoga Sutras, Narada Bhakti Sutras, Bhagavad Gita, etc., what do we see? That's not the only goal. That goal alone, if we could achieve that, that would be pretty amazing, to have self-realization. But more than this, we're meant to also have what is called Brahma Vidya. We're also meant to have realization of the absolute, that which is the self of ourself, that which is our source. So these are the dual goals of yoga. All right. This is all by way of introduction to the actual talk. Because now let's talk a little bit about, a little bit deeper about how it is that we are to achieve this. But first, what is yoga? Well, first let's talk about what yoga is not. Again, as I stated previously, a lot of people in the West especially have the idea that yoga is either A, the aerobics of India, or B, it's something that is just pure physicality, or C, it's something new agey. Yes, yoga was invented in the 60s. No. These are all stereotypes about yoga and yoga spirituality. What is yoga? Well, the word itself means unity. It means union. It comes from the Sanskrit verb root yuj, meaning to come together, to bring together, to unite. Unity in what sense? Well, several senses, but again, just for the sake of this talk, we're going to focus on this one sense in which we mean unity. Unity with ourselves and the divine. It is for this reason, very specifically, that I chose for Savitri to lead us all in this one, not mantra, but actually a shloka, a verse from the Bhagavad Gita. What is the deepest and highest essence of yoga? It is bhakti. It is devotion. It is love. Love not just in a generic sense, because love is a four-letter word. It's one of those words that everyone throws around. Oh, I love my husband, I love my wife, I love my car, I love my dog, I love chocolate ice cream, I love this, love that. And it gets to the point where the word itself is so generic it becomes meaningless. but rather what we are talking about is the highest form of love. Who here is not seeking love? Everyone is. Every living being actually seeks love. We know that. If you have even pets, they want love. They appreciate it when we give them attention. A plant appreciates it when we give the plant attention. When we talk to the plant, it grows better. People know this. We all want love. But what is the true essence of love? It's devotion. It is the idea of loving selflessly, of loving spiritually, of loving without calculation, of loving without thinking to ourselves, what am I getting in return? This is the nature of the love that we are seeking. And this indeed is something that can be revealed to us through yoga spirituality. Having said all this, what is the actual essence of yoga? Well, yoga is many things. Yoga is a philosophy. Yoga is a way of life. Yoga is a culture, interestingly. But more, yoga chitta vritti nirodha, Patanjali in the Yoga Sutras, gives us what is the actual definition of yoga. What is yoga? Headstand? Padmasana? What is yoga? Yoga is the stilling of the modifications of the mind. This is what Patanjali says. And Patanjali would know. He wrote the Yoga Sutras. This is what he says as his actual very definition of what is yoga. Not physical, not anything else, not Lululemon, no. Yoga is the stilling of the modifications of the mind. In other words, yoga is meditation. What does it even mean to still the modifications of the mind? What are the modifications of the mind? Well, sit down and try to meditate. Immediately you're going to encounter the modifications of the mind. What are the modifications of the mind? What is meant by this is that for the vast, vast majority of individuals, when we actually encounter our inner realm, our inner world, when we sit down and close our eyes in silence and try to be at complete peace, what we find is that our mind won't let us. What we find is that suddenly our mind wants to talk more than it ever has. Suddenly, as we're trying to focus on one thing, let's say a mantra, we'll be fine for a few seconds. We're focusing on the mantra, and then suddenly we realize, oh my God, for the last 5 minutes I've been thinking about everything on earth, what I was doing yesterday and what I'll be doing later today, and where was the mantra? What we find is that to control our mind, as Arjuna says actually in the Bhagavad Gita, it is actually easier to control the wind than to control our own mind. Arjuna actually says that in the Bhagavad Gita. It's easier to control the wind. Has anyone ever tried controlling the wind? That's easy. But to control our mind, that's not easy. That's difficult. And again, if you don't believe it, you just have to sit and try. Sit in silence, and immediately you encounter that modification. Thus, what is it that Patanjali says? Again, meditation is the very heart of yoga spirituality, and really all spirituality. Spirituality, regardless of what some people can think, is actually meant to be something extremely practical. It's actually meant to be something that applies to our everyday life. Again, the stereotypes that everyone probably thought about when I used the word yogi. The truth of the matter is, we do indeed have the ability, not just the ability, actually the calling, according to the Bhagavad Gita, to live in the world as a normal person, dressed normally, with a job, going to school, having a family, doing all of these normal things, going shopping, etc., etc. And yet we still have the ability to have that normal life while at the same time practice yoga spirituality successfully. This, in fact, is the entire teaching of the Bhagavad Gita. It's interesting, for those who have read the Gita, you know that Arjuna, being in depression, tries to pretend to Krishna, and you can't pretend with Krishna. He tries to pretend with Krishna that, oh yes, yes, I just want to be a yogi and renounce the world. Well, Krishna knows better. Arjuna, unfortunately, is just in depression. And for the rest of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains to Arjuna, if you want to be a yogi, do your duty. But do so thinking of me, Krishna being God, Krishna being the avatar. Do your duty. Work within the world in a very practical way. Do all the things you need to do. Dress nicely, eat well, do what you have to do. But with everything that we do, make our life into a living meditation, into an active meditation. That is the key. Good? Very good. So this is what I want to do now, is to just talk about several practical ways in which we can indeed incorporate yoga spirituality into our life. Because for those individuals who are here, who I know are spiritual people to begin with, you've heard this all before. You know that yes, it's possible to be in the world and yet spiritual at the same time. But what exactly does that look like? How precisely do we do this? Well, I want to talk about some very interesting ways in which we can indeed incorporate spirituality practically in our busy, busy, busy life. Number one, we want to live spirituality in all of our thoughts, in all of our words, in all of our actions. What does this mean? This means that, again, notice those three words, our thoughts, our words, our actions. These are three things that if we're alive, we can't avoid. You know, we all think, we all communicate, and we all have to do things within the world. Well, again, this is the yoga teaching of the Bhagavad Gita, that doing all of these three things, very simply, transcendentalize them, spiritualize them. And again, very practically, let me explain what's meant by this. Again, we cannot stop thinking. Sometimes we wish we could, just for a little while, but we're constantly thinking. Let us try to think of those topics which, rather than giving us anxiety, elevate us instead. Let us think of those wonderful, lofty thoughts of wisdom. Let us try to recite mantra in our mind. Let us try to recite the name of God in our mind. Let us think positively about other people in this world who we encounter. When we encounter someone and they seem especially grouchy that day and they're a stranger, rather than getting angry and thinking foul thoughts about that person, why don't we instead think to ourselves, you know what? Everyone is struggling in this world. As I've said earlier, it's a tough world. Who knows what that person has been going through, such that now they encounter me and it comes out. It might actually be the nicest person in the world, but it's just not their day. Let's have compassion in our mind toward people when we encounter them, even if they don't seem very compassionate toward us. Still, we can't control their mind, but we can control our own. All right? In our words, there's so much that can be said about this. We live in an age of communication. 99.9% of it, worthless. You know, who here is not on Facebook? Who here is not on some social media? Okay, one person, thank you. Very good. Believe me, you're the exception. Who here, does not watch television, does not, just is not plugged into the media? We constantly are surrounded by words. Well, when I mention words, I'm talking about words in both directions, bidirectional. Let us make sure that when we utter our words, we utter them with compassion, we utter them with wisdom. Let's not use our words, this God-given talent, this God-given power to communicate with others, to simply gossip about people, to criticize people, make people feel bad, etc. Instead, if we're going to speak, let's try to speak truth. Let's try to encourage others around us who are in pain. Again, this probably will be one of the themes of the talk this evening. So many people are in pain. They don't need more pain. They need the opposite. Let's use our words to inspire people. Because when we do that, when we use our words to inspire others, believe me, we will be inspired as well. So it's a two-way street. And then finally, in our actions, so much that can be said about our actions. We cannot live in this world without doing. Well, with everything that we do, let us always make sure that we do in such a way that we do not harm, and that instead we do the opposite. In any way that we can help others, in any way that we can benefit others, let's always make sure that we transcendentalize, that we spiritualize all of our actions, all of our activities. All right? There's much more, believe me, I'm being very fast. There's much more to be said about each one of these points I'm going to be talking about. Make every activity into a meditation. Again, we all are living within the world, How many here are living in ashrams right now? I am. No one else probably, correct? No? Okay, no one else. We're all living within the world. Another important teaching of the Bhagavad Gita is that we are meant to make all of our daily activities, including even seemingly mundane activities, into a meditation. How do we do this? Well, who here has to cook for themselves once in a while? Everyone. When you cook, don't merely have the attitude that, I'm just making food that I like the taste of and I'm going to enjoy it and that's it. Rather, meditate as you're cooking and think to yourself, where has this food come from? Where have these fruits and vegetables and grains and just so many wonderful, rich things from nature, where have they come from? Think about its source. Have gratitude as you're cooking. As you're cooking, think positive, wonderful thoughts about how nutritious, how wonderful this will be, what a blessing it is to have food, how some people in this world don't have food. There are people in this world who don't. Thus, in this way, positively, make even your cooking, even your eating into a meditation. As you're working at your job and you have to go in one more time and you have to battle this Austin traffic, which, I-35, I've told people, is the seventh circle of hell. I've experienced it, But as you are battling traffic on I-35, as you are going to your job, as you're at your job, and really if you had a true choice in life, you wouldn't be there, but you have no choice, make even your work into a meditation and say to yourself, how fortunate am I that I even have a job? There are people who don't. There are people who truly have looked and they've been unemployed for a year. Maybe not here in Austin, but trust me, many places in this nation. Again, have that gratitude, with the money that you make. Use your money for what you need to make sure that you have food, that you have shelter, that you have all the nice, wonderful things that you need. What do you do with the excess? What do you do with the excess? Give it selflessly to those who need it. Give it to good charities that are truly going to help others, feed people, do good things in the world. In that way, what are you doing with the fruit of your labor? You're spiritualizing it. You're transcendentalizing it. You're not using it just for your own purposes, but to help the world become even just a little bit of a better place. So in this way, we can transcendentalize our actions as well. Another very practical way that we can incorporate spirituality into our lives today: see God and see spirit, see souls in every being you encounter. In every being you encounter, don't just see them for the surface level. Again, the example that I gave before, that you bump into a grouchy person, but more than this. With every being who we encounter, the yogi has this vision that, yes, look around you. There's so much diversity, just in human beings alone, what to speak of other species. But are you encountering simply that body? Or are you, in actuality, encountering something infinitely deeper? With every unit of consciousness, with every living being who we encounter, we are indeed encountering consciousness. And this is true not just for human beings, this is true for every animal we meet. This is true for the insects, this is true for every living being. And make this into a practice, that everyone you encounter, even if it's just for a few seconds, you're shopping and okay, it's your turn to pay at the cashier, and that person who you're encountering right there, and they're kind of half paying attention to you, say to yourself, yeah, all right, that's who that person is on the surface, but deep within, what are they? They are an eternal, beautiful perfect unit of consciousness. Maybe now in a little bit of illusion, but that's who they truly are. See, this is why in yoga we have this beautiful, beautiful custom. Namaste, namaste. Why do we do this? Why do we do this? Is it just some hip thing to do? No. Namaste. Namaha te are the actual two words. Namaha te in Sanskrit. I offer my obeisance, my respects unto you. That's what we are saying. But what does that mean? Just literally to the surface level, the persona that we're encountering? No. It's one soul speaking to another. We are saying, I may not have full realization yet, but at least in theory, I know I am an eternal soul, part and parcel of the divine. And more, that's also what you are as well. That's what we're saying when we say namaste. So approach all living beings in this way. And all living beings. When you go home, say namaste to your cat. Say namaste to your dog. Say namaste to your pet goldfish. Because we are all spirit souls. Next, try to live a life that is virtuous. Let me explain what I mean by virtuous. So many spiritual traditions, religious traditions have said this. Treat others the way we would want to be treated. Very simply, treat others with compassion. Treat others with nonviolence. And nonviolence in every sense, in our thoughts, in our words, and in our actions, not just our actions. You see, we may think, well, I didn't hit anyone yesterday, so I guess I was nonviolent. But did you think foul thoughts about someone? If you did, then you were indeed being violent, but in your mind. Let us have violence toward no one. Self-defense, yes, that's different. Sure, that's different. But just day-to-day life, avoid all violence. Ahimsa. This is why ahimsa, or nonviolence, is one of the most important principles of yoga spirituality. Let's exercise compassion as much as we can, as much as is within our means. Even if we don't have the means, let us have infinite compassion within our hearts for all beings. It's interesting, just as an aside, yesterday I was talking about the bodhisattva principle, the principle of the enlightened or semi-enlightened being who has compassion toward others. And the sort of compassion that they have is actually something that is thoroughly unrealistic. And yet it is the compassion that we must have nonetheless. This is the sort of compassion that is true spiritual compassion. What are we? Well, we're finite. There's only so much that we can do. We're one person, with a limited body, with limited means, limited money, etc. Can we truly help and save every living being in creation? Of course not. But we want to nonetheless. And we would if we could. And we would if we could. That's compassion. That's compassion. If we have the ability to develop that compassion as a person, as an individual, our lives would change dramatically. If we could have this sort of compassion as a society, this world would become the kingdom of God upon the earth. Immerse yourself in this ancient wisdom as much as possible. If you have the ability to read, you have the ability to immerse yourself in this ancient wisdom. Remember how we started talking about this, about how yoga is the most ancient path on earth. These scriptures are the most ancient scriptures on earth, the Bhagavad Gita, etc., Bhagavad Gita, Upanishad, so many of these wonderful works, the Yoga Sutras, Narada Bhakti Sutras. Take shelter of these scriptures. Truly take shelter of them. These scriptures that are there were written by rishis. They were written by beings who attained freedom, true existential freedom that most of us can scarcely even imagine. Imagine reading the words of such beings and incorporating them deep into your heart and into your soul. So whenever you can, immerse yourself in these scriptures, especially Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is just truly amazing. Everything that I'm saying now, essentially, throughout this whole evening, is essentially the teaching of the Bhagavad Gita. Community. Community is something that is of vast importance. You know, we all live in communities of necessity. You know, we have no choice but to live in communities. We can live in communities consciously, however. We can live in communities in such a way that that very community itself is a vehicle for our own enlightenment and for our own self-empowerment. What does that mean? Well, today, unfortunately, there is no, let's say, social, political society that is geared around the enlightenment of the individual. That would be nice, wouldn't it? If there were some person who came to power and formed some government and they said, yes, our goal is to help elevate people spiritually and to help them know who they are. That doesn't exist. Instead, what are we to do? What do we have here right now this evening? Look around you, and I mean look around you. I can see you all. I see if you're not looking. What do you see? Yeah, look around you. This is a real test. This is a community. It may be seemingly temporary. You know, we're not going to be in this room forever, I hope. We all hope that that's not going to be the case. But the point is, this is a community. You already have a community, whether you know it or not, of fellow spiritual practitioners who are out there. There are individuals who are out there. They may be a minority. That's fine. Actually, that's good. But there are people who are out there, individuals who, like you, are seeking truth. Well, you seek those people. That's your community. That's your real community. Not just the neighborhood you live in, the city you live in, the nation you live in. No, that is your true family. When we have spiritual community like this, we feel whole. We feel indeed, truly, as if we have family, a real family. We feel as if there are people who care for us and more, who we can care for, who we can exercise this compassion with that I keep talking about, this compassion. So in every way, seek community, spiritual community. Finally, have a very strong daily sadhana practice. For those people who do not know that word, sadhana, it's a Sanskrit word. It simply means spiritual practice, having a daily discipline of spirituality. In addition to making your entire life, generally speaking, into a meditation, also it's very important to have a little bit of time set aside each day, whether it's half an hour, however much time you can spare. But each and every day, make sure that your spiritual practice life is there, is present, and is rich. You know, we want to know the fruits of yoga spirituality. We have to practice. We have to practice. We have to practice. What does this mean? Don't experiment with meditation. Don't go from one seminar to another seminar to another seminar. Oh, let me try this, let me try that. No, please have a practice. Have fidelity to it. Stick to it. Stick to it like a laser beam. Each day, regardless of anything that happens, regardless of all the excuses. Oh, but I'm especially busy today. No. Each day, steep yourself. In fact, if you can, begin your very day by steeping yourself in the meditational presence of the divine there in your life. But each day, what you will see is that when you have a serious practice like this, oh, there are going to be ups and downs. There are going to be some times when your practice is wonderful and oh my Lord, I feel so great today. And then there are going to be some times when, again, you're going to encounter those modifications of the mind. And after you've tried to meditate for 20 minutes, half an hour, you'll think to yourself, oh my Lord, that was terrible. I couldn't even concentrate today. What's wrong? You're going to have ups and downs, but it doesn't matter. The downs actually, if you truly understand this, are also ups. Because even those days when you're forced to struggle with the mind, what are you doing? You're making that focus stronger. You are building that, for lack of a better term, that spiritual muscle in such a way that if you stick with this each day, you will see that little by little, it will become easier to control the mind with each meditative experience. You'll see that you will enter deeper into states of calm, into states of beginning to experience inner bliss, ecstatic bliss. You will also see that those times in which you are experiencing that, over time, that will increase more and more and more. And rather than, okay, I've just meditated for half an hour, and I'd say, oh, maybe for like a third of that I actually felt it. It will become 2/3. Eventually it will become all of it. What you will see is that also that meditative experience will then also transfer into the rest of your life, so that even when you open your eyes and you get up and you go on with your day, increasingly that meditative experience will still be with you, even when you're not sitting and quote unquote meditating. So please stick with this each and every day. Because now I'm going to go into some very, very good specific tips for how to live in a very busy world, in a very busy city, in a very busy time when no one even has time to breathe and everyone is running from here to there and doing texts and answering emails and answering phone calls, etc., etc. And I have to pick up the kids from preschool, and I have to do this, and I have to go shopping, etc., etc. How to live in such a world and at the same time, again, practice everything that we're talking about, so that this doesn't end up just being yet another talk and then, okay, back to my crazy life. No, we want to make sure that this truly has an impact on people in such a way that, you'll see that what we're talking about truly is real. So, several things. Number one, learn to bend time in your favor. Easier said than done, but let me explain what I mean by this. You've heard this said before, how time is relative. Well, it's interesting. I won't go too deeply into physics and actually metaphysics. Time is both absolute and it's relative. Time is always there. If we're in the material world, we cannot avoid time. Yet at the same time, have we not seen that at certain points in our life, time goes quickly, and yet at other times it goes very, very slowly? Have we not seen that we can spend an entire day doing one thing that we then at the end of the day realize, why did I even do that? Video games. Just an example. Video games. But there are so many examples that can be used. Well, truthfully, if we truly understand that we are indeed the masters of our lives, even though often it doesn't seem that way, we do indeed have the ability to bend time in our favor. In other words, by the decisions that we make, we do have the ability to make the time to do spiritual things, to meditate, to do a puja. If you don't know what puja is, very simply it means like any sort of ritual where you are offering things to God ritually. We have time to do yoga. We have time to come to events like this. We truly have the time if we choose to make the time. That is what I mean by bending time in your favor. Don't think that you are a victim of time. On the contrary, time, truthfully, if you're a yogi, is there to serve you. In fact, interestingly, all the cosmos is, though sometimes it doesn't seem that way. But the truth of the matter is the cosmos itself is rooting us on if our goal is to know God and to know ourselves. Isn't that nice to know? The cosmos itself really is rooting us on. Reduce the screens in your life and simplify your life. You see, this also helps with time as well. We have too many screens in our life. We know that. We've got computer screens. We've got the screens that we carry with us 24 hours a day. Reduce this as much as we can. We think that we need them all, but the truth of the matter is people have done experiments, where they will do a screen fast for some time. They'll say, for a week, no computers, no phones, no smartphones, nothing for just a week. And what they see is that for the first 1 or 2 days, they start to go crazy. But by the end of the week, they suddenly come to the realization, wow, this is what it's like to be free. This is what it's like to actually be able to think my own thoughts rather than what someone liked on Facebook. This is what it's like to actually not be a slave of some little screen, half an inch thick. You would be amazed, not only the time that it would free up, but more than this, you would be amazed just how much of the content coming through those screens are nothing more than control mechanisms intended to dictate to you what is of importance in your life and what you should do with your money, i.e., give it to them. You know, free yourself from screens as much as you can, practically, practically. All right. In sadhana, in doing actual spiritual practice, don't be too busy in your spiritual life. And this is what I mean. Again, there are people, unfortunately, in the West especially, who are spiritual tourists. We are accustomed to a life of abundance. We are accustomed to, 10,000 flavors of ice cream, 10,000, TV channels, 100 million websites to visit, etc., etc. So we think spirituality is the same way. Well, the more mantras I can accumulate, the more different sorts of teachings I can accumulate, the more I can accumulate spiritually, maybe I'll get somewhere. Of course, those individuals who do accumulate very quickly find out that that's not the case. Rather, what they have instead is confusion. What true spirituality is in fact simplicity. What it means is, rather than having 10,000 mantras, none of which you actually know the meaning of and none of which you have the time to actually do, have one mantra. That's it. One mantra, one meditation practice, but practice it with fidelity. Practice it in a serious way, daily, and you will see that your life spiritually will be transformed. You see, again, modifications of the mind. There's too much going on, too much chatter, and then externally, too many screens screaming at us, too many things going on, filling our senses. Let's not do the same thing spiritually. Simplicity, even in spirituality. Stick to one mantra, one path, one yoga, one discipline, and what you will have is success. All right. Who here is a yogi? In any sense, who here is a yogi, please? Nice and high so I can really see. Okay, very good. Very good. The truth of the matter is, everyone here is a yogi. One or two people didn't raise their hands. You don't know, but you are a yogi. The people who didn't raise their hands as well. Every single one of us, we're all yogis. But what does this mean? If we wish to understand the full fruition of the yoga tradition in our lives, if all of these things that we hear about, that we read about, what is this? Enlightenment, self-realization, actual inner peace, all of these things that we hear about, if we want these things to become manifest in our lives, and if we have had even an inkling of a hint that, yoga seems to be the way to do this, let us respect the path. Let us honor the path itself. What does that mean? That means that we try to live this path with as much authenticity as possible. It means that, again, we don't confuse this ancient path with some American New Age consumeristic hucksterism. Sadly, New Age spirituality and profit motive has become enormous in yoga spirituality. Don't get me going on that. Don't fall for this. Don't fall for American consumerism in the name of spirituality. Rather have fidelity to this path. Again, the path is simplicity. The path is sincerity. The path is such that if you truly want to know truth, you will know truth. You don't have to buy a product from anyone. You don't have to do anything like this. Respect the path for indeed what it is, as an ancient tradition designed to do one thing and only one thing, and that is to bring us to our ultimate fulfillment. Fulfillment. This is a universal constant, not just with all human beings, but with all living beings. And I've talked about this before, but I'm going to talk about this just in brief right now, very, very simply, because it's very appropriate. We're all searchers. Every living being is searching, Every living being, from the ant to the plants to mammals to human beings to the gods, we are all searching. We think we're searching for individual things, like we're searching for a mate, we're searching for nice clothes, we're searching for a good home to live in, we're searching for material acquisitions, we're searching for acceptance, we're searching for the The ant is searching for a crumb. But we're all searching for that thing which we think will make us happy. That's a universal constant. But the other universal constant, sadly, is this. The search never gives us fulfillment. The ant will find that crumb. It'll be very happy. It'll go back to its little ant home, the little ant hill. What does it do? Rest at that point? Goes looking for the next crumb. Each of us, all of us as living beings, are searching for our crumbs. Whatever that crumb is. It's not an actual crumb. It'll be something bigger. It'll be that great car that we've always wanted. It'll be something. It'll be something. But fulfillment never occurs. This is ultimately what we want. What is meant by fulfillment? Fulfillment is that thing which, once we have it, the search ends. The search ends because we now are at peace. We now are spiritually at rest. That is what we're searching for. And that is what this path indeed, if we respect it and give ourselves over to it, this is what this path can, with our cooperation, give to us. This is the nature of yoga spirituality. This is the nature specifically of meditation, which is the heart of yoga spirituality and the heart of yoga. Good? All right. Very good.
Om Bhuvasvaha Om Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yonaha Prachodayat Om Bhuvasvaha Om Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yonaha Prachodayat Om Bhuvasvaha Om Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yonaha Prachodayat